So then, we are back with more understandings from the time of the Second Tabernacle services, where we find the Aramaic English translation of the word. This translation comes from the original manuscripts of the prophets of the Israelic lineage, so then we can understand the time of the end as per Yeshayahu the prophet. We find layers of understanding of the spring feast, the autumn feast, and also the returning of the cities of the Messiah laid waste for many centuries. As we read then Yeshayahu the prophet, we must ask ourselves, what should we then do when the new system of China already made evident in the United States, and then when the third step of the linking with the icon of investment comes, and then how should then the world deal with it? Obviously, by reading Yeshayahu the prophet and Daniel, we find then some very specific understanding of events, flow of events regarding then the economies, and regarding also the time when the kingdom of the north becomes then the leader of arms, and then later on coming with a great army and much equipment. Well, let's then understand what's going on in the world as far as we can understand from the news, without invoking any kind of a spiritual revelation from heaven or some sort of speaking with angels, or worse yet, speaking with God himself, without the bridge of tabernacling. So then, as far as we can read and understand, US is then involved with the eastern nations. They want more war fronts. Australia is already involved with it. There are many protests in London, for instance, to come out of this area, because nations, they are aware of it is the second Vietnam, and then the expenses is going to be extremely. Not only this, but what's going on then in the world as far as the Western is concerned. Now the economy of US is not going very nicely, though they are printing a lot of money, the printing money festival. But not only this, as then US then is pondering not printing as much as they were thinking, then they're going to increase the price of the USD as then market manipulation. And then many countries such as Brazil, that has an economy of nearly bankruptcy. This country is not whatsoever developing. The economy is stagnated. The government has become inflated with its own ideas and own ministers, and many places of jobs, and no return of the investments. At this time, the existing government was able to get to the second round of votes on the 26th, and the investors, they are already very skeptical of this government. Some of them are leaving this country because they do not want to work and pay taxes. Many of the tradespeople of this country are extremely unsatisfied, because as they work so much, they are spending a lot of their resources on paying taxes. And this government is absolutely a thief. They are stealing in the area of energy, stealing in the area of housing, stealing in the area of salaries, and simply doesn't stop. China is making many deals with many countries, and this country, Brazil, is absolutely stagnated. This country simply does not know how to play a present role regarding then the other nations. This country, because of some sort of sporty events of the past, they think that they can take on the world by itself. Well, Brazil is wrong, and the nation is bankrupted. It's not growing, and the investors are not staying in this country. Worst yet, if the existing government wins this new period of election for the next 4 years, then the rest of the investors are then obviously leaving this country, because they are not going to spend their resources in a place where then the government is simply gorging themselves with the resources and not giving on to the people. So that's the first problem. The second is then obviously the Soviet Union is returning very strongly. Then the ruble, unfortunately, lost value this year from about 20%. But then there is a situation going on also in the Soviet Union where then the next 24 to 36 months they are going to ditch out USD. They no longer want to work with the USD. This then places us in a very important situation regarding the holy instructions. As we read then, and as it was explained, China also is involved with this period where China wants to replace the USD with the Chinese yen. So in a gradual understanding, step by step, US is becoming isolated once again from the main motion of this time of trade, of this time of restoration. As they are becoming far and far away, let's then understand what goes on with the nations trying to team up with the West. Firstly, let's understand then Dragon Mart. The huge Chinese market must be completed, and then bringing the products of Asia with a price very competitive will cause this country, Brazil, simply to go bankrupt further. But truly it is important, because then they must value the real, or then the existing monetary system of the country. Then the government has to come up with some sort of a plan, either to lean up or then go further bankrupt. Because as the Chinese companies and the worldwide companies, they are going to search for products, and they shall to bring to this country with the prices lower than the international market, but not much lower, but lower. Then countries can start doing trade even further with China. This country has the ability already of doing direct trade with China and no longer using the USD. These should bring some benefits, but this nation is trying then to combat the Chinese, and the problem is then the products of Brazil, they're going to stay on the shelf for a long time, as then Dragon Mart becomes the utmost important market of the Americas. As far as the US, we understand very plainly, as then the products coming from China and elsewhere in Asia, up to 5 times cheaper, purchasing in Cancun, Mexico, than buying the same product made in China or then the Asiatic countries, and then have to pay 5 times more. You have to do only calculations. This then gives us another important point regarding then the system of China. Alibaba, for instance, is the most important trade system in the United States. The Chinese system has come. Now then, how could we then, by reading a section of Daniel, then the ships shall return, and then they shall be furious with the covenant, explaining of US and the returning of their ships and their military away from the world. There is a time where then there is a jump from the 8th verse until it reaches the 29th. So we are during a time where then this section, this big huge section, must take place. But then, as we read the situation, what would be then the oil in South America? Oil in South America won't be very relevant. as nations are simply involved with themselves. They refuse to reach out to other countries. They refuse to learn English. They think that they can take on the world by themselves, and while they can't, because the economy is bad. So then, whatsoever they have as far as petroleum won't be very active in the near future, because the sons of Ishmael, the Arab nations, are then the very topic where then the oil they use, they're going to be subsidized, and then the freighters can directly do trade with Arabia via many kinds of benefits coming from this new system. So we are then in this very important verge of time and understanding the holy instructions for what they are. Truly, as then the USD is being ditched, let's then understand another factor as far as the influence of the Arab nations regarding then the freighters. As it was explained many times before, logistics are going to be extremely important in the future, the updating of ports and airports for the purposes of trade. Nations, they are trying to extend once again the 1,000 years of deceit, where then governments, they think they can be absolutely the ruler of this new system, and they can give then the older people then money to put under the pad. Well, these people are ridiculous. They are stupid, they are ignorant, because that's not the way it's going to take place. As Daniel then was explaining as far as the statue on the 2nd chapter of Daniel, let's then make sure we understand what Daniel saw as far as iron not mixing with clay. Firstly, let's understand the economy of the US is bankrupt. What is holding them is this printing money festival, and when they do stop doing these so much printing, then they're going to manipulate the market of what they can charge the nations using their money, and obviously furthering combats and conflicts. But other countries, such as Brazil, has got nothing to show forth. The economy is not strong, it's stagnated, the nation can't develop any longer. The petroleum deposits are simply a joke. Many of the areas they count on so easily a few years back, simply there is not even technology to go so profoundly in the ocean to get the petroleum out of it. So then, the only choice is joining up with China. As China is making many deals with the Soviet Union, for instance, there was then on the 5th, there was 49 deals China made with the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union already simply let Cuba get away with the debt. They were able to pardon the debt from the time of the Soviet Union of the first. And then, not only this, but China is doing more and more and more with the Asian countries, and the West is becoming stagnated. And doing trade with South America, for instance, is nearly non-relevant. Understandably, China has a vast majority of the Pacific. They have raw materials, though they can make more deals. But the problem is the Western nations, they are trying to extend the time of the 1,000 years of deceit, and they have no market to show forth for. So then, China is recuperating the momentum prior of the airstrikes on Iran and Iraq, and the involvement of Iran with the Soviet Union also is extremely important, because brings us to a point where then the system by the 28th verse of the 11th chapter then has already the 3rd step of investment. And then the US has not realized that the importance of during this time until it reaches the 28th verse of linking up the USD and the virtual systems as the basis of an exchange. done then instantly via online. Not only this, but more space equipment must be put up in the air, in the space, and then nations must receive the signal from China. Prior to this time, let's then understand the importance of upgrading our own ways of living. The world won't be as used to be. Whosoever does not understand banking via computer, they are going to be left aside. There won't be anymore as much money people will handle it. It's done via the telephone. If people they have a choice of having money, they have to pay taxes on top of it, because printing money is very expensive. As the world then is coming to these, let's then understand the importance of Dragon Mart. It's the most important market of China outside of the mainland China, where then nations can do trade with China and receive products for the least cost, so they can develop themselves, so they can rebuild their countries and do what the instructions are saying. And there is a time of a restoration where then not only the holy cities are returning, but then the Gentiles were included in the plan. As Dragon Mart becomes active, products from many kinds of nations of the Asiatic people are coming to this area of the world, and then the West will subside as a force. Thank God, for quite some time people are waiting for this, because nations are extremely tired of war and destruction, and people they want to have the ability of organizing their lives via their computers, and doing trade and investments and sending and receiving, so they can do their own work. They can refurbish their own houses, their own countries, their own cities, and some of them torn by war. As we expect then the next 24 to 36 months for the Soviet Union to ditch out then the USD, how can we make a relation with the arms industry? It's very obvious. At this time, US has imposed many sanctions on the Soviet Union. As a result, the Soviet Union is making more deals with Asia, where the main forward motion of trade of this world is at. And US, unfortunately, is isolating itself further. They are abusing their power once again. In fact, most of the wars of the Middle East in the last few years was caused by the policies of US. So then, as far as NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, they are trying to modernize themselves with new weapons. They are going obviously to have the rapid response, and there is a very strong shift of modernization of NATO forces. It is also time for the Soviet Union to become quicker, to do their duty, and obviously making a deal with Egypt, because Egypt is awaiting for some aid and also arms to do their work. As we understand, Northern Africa must be organized also by the Egyptians. As we read then Daniel, from then the verse 8 until the 11th, you find then the Soviets giving arms to Egypt, Egypt turning and then organizing the area of Egypt and also Northern Africa. These you find until the 11th verse, but you have to read then from the Israelic lineage scripture. If you read from the Greco-Roman, you won't understand. But from the Israelic lineage, you find step-by-step events taking place right before your eyes. And because of these, then, from then on, after the 11th chapter, we would study later And then we're going to determine when then Congo should be joined with the Soviet Union and China, and finishing up with Che Guevara and what he did during the 60s. So then the Soviet Union and his friends, China, also involved with it, and then the relationship with the violent ones as then predicted by Yirmiyahu the prophet. As we can understand, Brazil, this country, United States, they're trying to join up with the West, trying to extend the junk of 1,000 years of this heat, and it won't work because the nation is already bankrupt. The investors, they are already searching for other countries other than Brazil. The investors, they do not like this country and what they are doing with the leadership of this country. The Workers' Party has proven itself unworthy. This existing president has taken then the leadership in 2010 with a 7.5% growth year, and they are delivering with 0.3, a fraction. And the investors, if this president stays as it is, the investors are going to go away. So then, besides the thieving going on in this country so badly, politicians, they simply rob the people. Money that should go to the healthcare, they are stealing. Money that should go to those areas of infrastructure, of updating of ports and airports, they are stealing. This country, it is so much involved with the Catholicism and is the worst place on the planet of stealing the money from the people. They have to start wondering what kind of a religion is this that always promotes stealing. And as you can understand from the Bible, they use "thou shalt not steal." But this country is then obviously one of the top in the world that steals from the people. As then the scandal with the state-owned petrol company, he was caught stealing from the company and ended up with a resignation rather than firing, and he received many words of awards. He was awarded for many years of exemplary service. That's how he received then his resignation. So then, this country is not serious. And those investors out there thinking the situation is going to change, they can be sure of it, it won't. This nation is bankrupt. Whatsoever was done these last 12 years, those are gone. The money is spent, is gone. The nation squandered its own wealth. So then, let's wait for Dragon Mart, because Dragon Mart is coming up in Cancun, Mexico, and then the products of Asia are coming then to the Americas. This is going to obligate the governments to do a nicer work to make sure they promote then banking, promote then private sectors, so then the products can be sold also in Cancun. So then, next time I'm going to evaluate more as far as how is the covenant, what's going on in Israel, what is the relationship then as U.S. becomes isolated, and then as they join up with an unbelieving Israel, and then becoming the Gog and Magog. And then when the system is then set up, when the third step then is set up, then the works of war regarding then the time of vengeance then shall start. So then, prior of these, we find then this third step coming, and then the rejection of USD by the most important countries of this world. You already found the Kingdom of the East rejecting the USD and the Kingdom of the North. This then is a done deal. US then is set aside, and the forward motion is returning back to China, where it at the moment rightfully belongs. So then, next time we're going to evaluate more of the situation with the covenant and then establish the relationship with these Gog and Magog and the rest of the world. So please stay tuned. Much more coming up.